Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Sawyer. I work for a company called Neustar. I'll explain a little bit more about Neustar. It's probably a name you've not heard of much in the UK before. My presentation this afternoon is on audience targeting solutions. It's a new service we're launching, or it's just starting here in the UK, been going a short while. It's been in the US for about 18 months. So as I progress, a little bit about Neustar, just so you have some bearing on where we're coming from. So Neustar, a US company, been around about 12, 15 years. And it acquired a company called Quova. That's a name in IP geolocation. Some people know a little bit more, about 2 or 3 years ago. And that's what's powering behind the service that we're launching here in the UK. So Neustar, large American company, bit of a backdrop, lots of traffic, lots of data. It powers the North American mobile telephone numbering system, DNS, DDoS, lots of data on individuals in the US, not so much about that in the UK. But there's lots of data powering the systems, and IPGeo powers this audience targeting solutions. Now within there we've mapped every routable IP address globally, and have been doing so for the last 12 years or so. So audience targeting solution is a new service using real-time bidding where we reverse engineered some of our data. So it's relevant localized advertising using IPGeo and some of the interesting information that we don't actually sell that we're using behind the systems as well. So exactly what is it? Many of you may know about IPGeo. It has geographical information in it, usually down to city level. You can buy this from $0 to many thousands of dollars depending upon the quality of it. Information down to city level, lots of techno information about domain names, connection types, connection speeds. And lots of this data has been bundled for many years and used by ad servers to target ads locally. We're in this market as well. We sell our data through what was our brand name, Quova, now Neustar, to many ad serving companies. But there's a level of information that's within this data. And we decided to look at a different way to take this data to market and all the other sources of data that we have that we don't presently sell. Behind some of it is we have much more information about postcodes. There's a level to what we supply within IPGeo that's publicly available, but behind the scenes we have a lot more data. So we decided to start to use some of that in a different way. Adding other bits of data that we have to it in terms of about businesses, demographics, and other information that can enhance and then start to build segments against some of this data that we can target ads for. So we brought to market in the US last year a new solution that we can target across different parameters, and I'll show you some different use cases about how that can be used. So we reverse engineered our data in reality. So what happens normally is you'd sell a chunk of IP data, you put an IP into it, and out will come data. What we've done is to take our data and put other things into it. So we'll start to target by business names, for instance. So we'll start to compile a list for a company that may want to target some businesses. If we enter those businesses into our database, we can then know, for instance, which IPs belong to that business. Or you may put in a geographical area, and we will get out all the businesses and all the consumers necessarily associated to those geographies. You can put in SIC codes. We can start to add other things like Mosaic or Cameo to it, then it will start to target by segments, and we match postcodes with this data to get a more targeted offering. So there's lots of different ways of using this data, and to some extent in a presentation like this I'll not get across the different ways that you can start to carve the data up. So a lot of our presentations to agencies and brands has been about talking to us about what actually can you do. If we give you this piece of information, what actually can you target? For instance, you could target against some locations that may be well known. Airports is a good one, perhaps potentially trains that come through known gateways. You can start to target possibly universities. It's a big market for us in targeting students across, as we know where people are coming from, So you can then start to target those ads. We also know the difference generally between home and work. It's not a foolproof because it depends upon the size of the business. Once you can get over a certain threshold, you can start then to distinguish between home users and business users, and you can start to target different parameters against those. We built this as a different way to look at how to use and sell our data. We can reach unique audiences. We're not necessarily aware of anybody else with the ability to do this to the level that we can do at the moment. We have much more granular IP than we consider that's available anywhere else in the market, purely because of the amount of data that we collect globally. In different country markets, we supplement this with data from our partners, who are able to help us and build our algorithms in order to refine some of the characteristics of where IPs are. Without going too much into how an IP is and where it comes from, if I use the UK as an example, 4 main ISPs, and there can be a lot of tunneling of IPs in terms of where you are and where IPs come out. And so some days in the ad serving market, serving granular ads to locations, the market can be a little bit muddied in terms of, can you do this to this area? Can you serve in this region? Can you serve in this county? Because if you're coming via a BT connection, they can very well easily tunnel you and you can come out 100 miles away. But what we have is data that's added lots of different levels of sophistication to this in terms of identifying where those IPs really are. So lots of new B2B possibilities, lots of new B2C possibilities as well. And this has all been enabled, really. This market probably couldn't exist for us without an RTB platform. So we built our own network on AppNexus, and we bid for ads in real time. We know more about that ad coming in, that IP, than anybody else, we believe. And so we can buy those IPs, add our data to it, and target against what we see. It's been going in the US, I say, for about 18 months. Our market has steadily grown there from one person trying this and starting building it to quite a large, substantial team. It's now probably one of the largest single growth areas for us at the moment. Launching this here in the UK, it's a large market, lots of interesting things, lots of data that we've been building over the last year in order to enable to be able to do this, because getting that granular location against IPs in the UK has never been sort of an easy thing to do. So perhaps to look at some examples to demonstrate probably what we can do and what we've been doing. Reaching a student market has been a big start for us in terms of how we can target that market, purely by looking at an IP. And I go to lots of agencies and talk to them about targeting without cookies. There's no cookies here. This is purely just seeing an IP. Comes across the exchanges, we see this IP, we buy that IP. We know more about it than anybody else. So what we do is, behind the scenes, we go off, we build a list. Here in the UK, we can build a list of all the IP ranges associated to universities or colleges. We build this list separately, we attach it to the platform. Every time we see an IP coming in that equals one of those IPs that belongs to a university or all universities, then we can target an ad with a particular message to that university, for instance. That's a big market for us, and it's been growing very fast, being able to target that 18-25 market, 19-25 market with specific messages. Now, we can't tell if it's a decision maker or somebody who is in propensity to buy at that time. We're just targeting somebody accessing, on-ramping via that platform, and then you can start target them with a particular banner or ad. I say, it's when we go and talk about this, it's been one of probably the single biggest growth areas for us. We've been talking to many shops, an example of one jewellery shop in terms of looking at their B2C market as well, targeting certain areas around shops, stores, store locations, store openings, store revamps. And this is just an example of one that was very specific in terms of targeting from a postcode central point around, building the database of of businesses and types of companies that were in that area and targeting. So every time an IP from those lists or areas, shops, businesses that we saw coming online looking for an ad spot, we can then only buy those relevant to those locations that we wanted. We think, again, it's just a unique solution that nobody else can offer potentially in that market. Grocery store chains, again, a large area for us in terms of looking at what they're doing. They're trying to reach their audiences in a radius marketing area. They're trying to target households within that area. We can target an ad specifically to home users. We can separate home users and business users, basically because we know a little bit more about the connection type. So we know when somebody is accessing via a certain connection type, they're coming via a certain ISP. They'll have a line speed of a certain amount. We'll know whether this is a DSL line, they're coming via their mobile. If it's a higher speed line, this will show up to us, and so based with other data on their domain names and things like this, you can identify them as a work unit. So we can target people in a fairly defined postcode areas. People can bring us lists and we can say, yes, we can target across the northwest, the northeast, whichever region you wish, or even to define postcodes and target those people around radius areas and just drive a campaign to those particular people. So we can't tell whether they're going to, at the moment, necessarily whether they're going to buy or something. We're adding other data to this so we can then start to put Mosaic or Cameo against this, so you can then target segments against people. And so in real time you can buy an ad on exchanges targeting a particular segment, knowing with accuracy where that's coming from. Probably this is relevant. This was a trade show we did somewhere that was for anybody ramping on via the internet connection of that trade show was visible to us, and so we could drive traffic locally around and make more people aware. We knew the connection portal that site was using, and we can then identify anybody connecting to anything and drive traffic to us. So there can be very specialized areas that we can get to. There's always a caveat. We have to know, it has to be visible to us on the systems what they're using. A lot of the times they are, sometimes they're not, but a lot of times you can tell that they're using a particular carrier. It's been registered to them, you know who it is. We've done many campaigns for airports, convention centres, locations specific. Campaigns for people, technology companies doing events in cities. They're doing different events around different cities, launching out new systems, technologies, and want to reach all companies over a certain size within that area. These are all things that we try to do with the data and come up with interesting ways to sort of try and reach people with new ways. A specific one we did was for a health club, looking at trying to target people coming to that health club. So a very small campaign. They wanted to reach people in radiuses around that health club. So the campaign was to go to businesses to try and attract people who could drive to that after they've been to work, come their lunchtime, whatever. A specific campaign promoting that health club within a short drive time of that club. A very targeted offering. So again, you can translate this into all sorts of different events and different situations. So again, we know the postcode. We don't expose the whole postcode. In many cases, we'll know the 6 to 7 digits. We have to sometimes knock this back to a certain level if we publicly expose this to anonymize it enough. But when we can know the 6 or 7 digits, then we can match it with a Mosaic or a Cameo profile and then target against that as well. This was a slightly different one, a campaign on a much larger scale where a major insurance company had a very large brokerage network. I think it was over 10,000 brokers, and they wanted to reach and communicate to their brokerage network. So they gave us a list of the names of all the brokers they wanted to target. This was over 10,000. We put these brokers' names into the database. Again, we reverse engineer it, and we pull out the IPs then, all the ranges of IPs associated to those companies. We know which IPs they use as we monitor systems globally. We can understand then the traffic that comes from those IP connections and then where those IPs are. So again, every time a brokerage company goes online, somebody may come to the exchanges then looking for an ad spot to be filled. We'll know that there's an IP requesting a spot. In real time, we're looking it up. Does it match one of the 10,000 companies? If it does, we serve an ad. And that's the message from the insurance company offering different products and services to those companies. It's a very focused thing to do in terms of, again, the question that comes up when we do these then, but can we target only the decision makers within those companies? And the answer is no, we can't separate. So it's anybody coming from those IPs can see the ads that are coming on. So it can be anybody from any function within that company. It's a question of if we can get enough eyeballs on it, then there is some traction. So if I sort of talk a bit about how the actual process works. So we engage with a brand, with an agency, we identify how they can monetize different sorts of online traffic in a different way. It's about them either coming up with some ideas about company names, radius targeting across them, connection types, locations. There's almost an endless stream of different ways we can get an ad message to them just using the IP. Remember, there's no cookies involved, there's nothing else involved, it's just purely the IP. With much more granular postcode information, we're able then to start to match some of these and serve ads in a much more focused way than has ever been possible before. So it's a question of digging deeper into our data in a different way. We sell this on a CPM basis, on a campaign basis, and they can run from a few days to several months, depending upon what the sort of campaign is. I'm not an expert on the RTB platforms. I come from the geo side more, but there's a fair amount of information and click-throughs that come through from the information from the platforms. You can look at some of the ROIs that come off it. It's always an area that we dive in with our customers to try and explain the value behind it and look at different ways of using some of this information. In the UK, we've been looking to partner with many other companies to add information to this. And some of the big areas that we're working hard to achieve is to be able to, in the B2B business market area, is to be able to siphon off and segment different companies by different sizes, by turnover, by employee size, and things like this. So when we see an IP coming in from a company, we'll know who that company is, but the IP geo isn't going to give us anything about that business. So we've added and supplemented other data to say we could target companies over a certain employee size, over 100 employees, or trading over a certain level. Or they may be other companies, large international brands backhauling their traffic. We understand how they're backhauling their traffic and so can target them in their right locations. So lots of data behind the scenes about businesses and building with other partners to improve our B2C offering. So we don't think this is available. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong afterwards. We don't believe that this is something that's available in the market at all at the moment. It's a new way of reverse engineering IP data. Our data comes from, it came from originally from a company called Quova, which was taken over, which in some cases sits behind many of the large ad-serving platforms, many of the media platforms here in the UK. All have Quova data sitting behind them in order to make IP assignments and locations. Probably everybody in this room who's gone on the internet today has probably been checked by one of our IP systems. They're across so many different portals here, particularly in the UK.